Did I show y'all the thing where got you and me confused?
No.
Oh, he just DM'd me and he said like, "Oh, I really thought this thing you said in this episode was really great," and then I was like, "Oh no, that was Brit."
Oh, this is
That's funny because you have the
We
most
can benefit
distinctive
from
voice
this.
of all of us.
Yeah, I would think so. I told him like I have kind of like the husky stoner
You have the
voice,
grizzly voice of the group.
It's those nice Welsh baritones.
Yeah, exactly.
You could tell Cork is the bearded one of all of us.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
And the bald one.
Yeah. It's true. It's the high T causes the baldness and the deep voice.
Yeah.
It's Alex!
Well, it's episode 217 of View from 202 after a deflating 1-0 loss at home in the latest installment of the New York Derby. All four of us are here. We're all back from our different trips abroad after bringing in bundles of transfers with us. You know, I've signed the entirety of the Gaelic Football League. You know, I was like, great, football, that's what they call it, right? No problem. They're going to suit up next week. It should be no problem.
Is it like soccer except like they play darts or something in the middle of it?
It's like it's soccer and rugby combined. They would be upset if I said that, but it's like you run around court kind of like rugby, but then I think there's some sort of limitation on how far you can just run with the ball in your hands. So you kind of have to dribble either by dribbling the ball like it's basketball, or you can kick it up to yourself. But then there's also, for both hurling and Gaelic football, there's like a soccer net, and then straight up from the posts keep going up and have like a, you know, American football style uprights. And if you get it through the uprights, that's 1 point. And if you get it in the goal, that's 3 points. And that works for both of them. So for Gaelic football, they run around and kind of like tackle each other, but then they'll get to the end and then they'll like kick it like a soccer ball into the goal. So I've pitched this idea to Bernd Eibler, and well, the original joke was that I didn't know the difference and that I'd signed the entire of them, but we can go with both. Anyway, and then Sam signed the entirety of the French bocce national team, right? Yeah. So we're fucking set.
I got rid of some dead wood on the team. We were able to chip away Luna's uterus.
Oh, great.
Yeah,
That was really dragging the team down.
definitely.
Every week, we were just coming on and we're saying fucking Jason Pendant, fucking Isier Jame, you know, Manny Egbo, Lucas Monzon, and Luna's fucking uterus. All signs of failed administration at Red Bull New York. So it's about time. But all four of us are here. So it's me, Brit. We got Cork here.
Hello.
That's Cork. Sam.
Hi.
Back in the country. And Alex, Peaches. You go by both.
Yeah. Hello.
Okay. I was worried you weren't going to say
No,
something.
yeah, I know. I thought you were going to say my last name, but...
Well, I didn't say anyone else's last name.
Yeah,
So I
but-
said you're two.
I was prepared for you to dox me and just me on
I think
air.
you're already doxed.
Yeah, but
It
nobody
would've counted
listens to this
doxing.
show, so it's okay.
That's true. Well, people might this week because it was a big week for bad reasons. 1-0 loss at home to City. Packed house from what I hear. I'm working on weekends now, so I wasn't able to make it, and this is going to affect my attendance going forward. Sorry to say, but
Oh, that's a joke on you because I got a 5-match attendance bonus, so now I could attend a fan Q&A with the players after the Orlando game.
Uh-oh.
oh boy, oh boy. Are you gonna? I'm just guessing it's gonna be based on Sunday. It's gonna be Tom Barlow, Serge Ngoma, Daniel Edelman, and 2 players yet to be signed. You know, all the guys, all the main guys. You know, which
Yeah, the
reminds
first
me, by the way,
invites.
I'm frustrated that we in our episode after the Tops night. Apparently, they did just send out packs of different top cards to
Yeah.
everyone, and we just fucking got that wrong.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, we may have gotten different facts wrong about different things on this podcast.
That is unacceptable.
Such as like different times that different players got injured in different seasons, you know, that affected big seasons. But this is the fact that I'm most upset about. So I am hiring a ombudsman to come in and clean up our act after this is.
We're sorry to all of
a
those
public
who were
editor.
affected. Realize how sensitive of a topic this was.
I'm bringing in some of the best fact checkers that Vox has to offer, flying them in from DC at my expense
Ooh.
to try and clean up
To be fair, like the Tops legal team, I think might be one of the ones we could take on.
I mean, I'm glad you're doing something with that NYCFC.com money.
Yeah,
let's
true.
let's really focus on the first crime of the weekend yet again. You know, as the famous line says, "You will betray me 3 times." We're up to 2 now, so keep a watch out on the Ben Cork Judas watch, I guess.
Well, I know you. I know you had us say something to our names in the beginning to tell us all apart. But is Sam and Cork really not the same person? Did they not betray us once on their date to the Yankee Stadium?
No, I mean we put Sam up to that.
Yeah,
also,
true.
you also applied for the date. Let's not forget, didn't you?
Yes, true.
Yeah, you 100%
But
applied.
I've also put myself in positions to be hired by NYCFC.
Did you? I didn't. I thought that
on
was
this
just a
podcast?
joke.
Well,
Oh, okay.
as a means to sabotage them from the inside out, you know. Of course, but
Right.
But now joke's on us because they've put Sam and I on the podcast to.
and jokes on
Gather
us
facts.
because we've installed our own way to screw ourselves out from the inside. So
Yeah.
Apparently.
But it was a packed house. Was it difficult to usually just find our seats? I mean, because usually we sort of just float around in the stadium, you know, in 202. But I hear it was a packed one.
Yeah, Emily and I were trying to go get seats in 202, and it just was overwhelming, the number of people. So we just kind of relegated ourselves to 204 instead.
I mean, it is a
moved, like-
premium section,
Yeah.
to be fair.
Yeah.
7 rows up because families kept sitting in the seats that they paid tickets for.
They even took the tarps and the corners out. They canceled the construction plans to let an extra, like, you know, a couple thousand people in.
I was gonna say the only tarps that were left in the stadium looked like they'd been there since the beginning of the stadium,
Yeah.
like 2010.
The only empty spot of the stadium is what appeared to be
The previous allocation pretty away.
city's previous allocation.
Yeah.
'Cause
That's great.
The section
It was like
next
a
to them was
noticeably
Okay,
like empty
I'm
section.
glad, so they just
yeah.
didn't sell it, General. That's great.
I forgot that was the case, and they had gotten that banned because when even it obviously was packed. It was the most packed that RBNY or RBA has been since before COVID. But then I looked at the city group and I was like, damn, that looks like pretty small. But then I forgot. Yeah, like
But that was like it was an entire section, and it's
Right.
like there's like this barrier around them, which was also nice. I guess.
That's smart
but,
because
like,
if they just opened it up, they probably just would have bought tickets.
Right.
Right.
So clever. But sounded like from what I hear, was a good atmosphere. I mean, the ESPN broadcast was a little muted on crowd noise, I have to say.
It
I
was
think just
loud,
across the
yeah.
board, but I've heard it was loud.
It was a great crowd. Also a bigger shame for that reason. What was to come, but yeah, it felt like a big event. Big game atmosphere, big derby energy,
big
like
bathroom lines.
yeah. The concessions were such a mess that I had the hottest chicken tenders I'd ever had in RBA.
Whoa.
But it was like also noticeably red. Like I'd never seen RBA that like painted red.
I was about to
Wow.
say there was very little city presence. Like
Yeah.
the city fans in at least in 204, they were only like a
Sprinkled.
half
Yeah.
dozen. There were like 4 like a couple groups of like people who were really like into it, but otherwise very red.
But for like me, it's also like how far up it went up into the section, and like it was covering the blue seats.
You know,
That's
I also
what it felt.
saw.
Yeah.
I didn't see any city stuff in the city all day, but I did see Red Bull's stuff, and like even at my neighborhood bar after the game, I met up with my sister, and there was just a bunch of guys straight back from RBA who were like still in the Red Bull stuff, and I was like, yeah, city fans just don't really exist in real. I mean, they don't really exist online either. I don't know, they just don't really exist, which makes losing to them even more baffling. Jesus Christ.
But they don't. Yeah, like even after the game though, like their presence, like isn't. It doesn't feel like we lost an embarrassing loss from like what we've heard from them.
Yeah, I mean, they're nowhere to be found. We're mostly just
you want to just let her out.
Luna. Are you upset about the loss? But I mean, it was. I think it makes sense though because they didn't really have much to be too excited about in the game, except the one chance that they converted. I guess towards the end of the game when the team sort of completely gave up. It was maybe more interesting for them. But the start of this game, I mean, really, I think the most noteworthy thing is that we have a pretty familiar look on this team sheet in a lot of ways. But we go out there without a striker. We have Omir Fernandez playing as a false nine, and it looks like I actually really enjoyed Danny Higginbotham's color commentary on the match on ESPN, because he was able to actually talk about it, and he thought it was perhaps clever. I don't know. It was just refreshing to hear a player who had a career in the 21st century talk about it. But did Struber give any comments before the game or on Friday along these lines?
Didn't hint anything on Friday. His press work on Friday was very. I mean, it was a good spirit, because going into the game, having obviously beaten City 3-0 a few weeks ago in the Cup, just kind of felt like the team might have some momentum to just keep that going, especially given that we had a full week of rest and training while City had to go to Dallas midweek. And it just, all felt like, the most prepared and just kind of set. There were no injuries to talk about. So it was all just kind of a, how are we going to beat him? How are we going to kick ass kind of mood? And no hints about any kind of, weird lineup stuff. But then, we see the lineup without a striker, or with Omir Fernandez as a false nine, basically, because, he's, we've talked about how Omir Fernandez is not really a midfielder, which is true. But then also when he's a forward, he has, almost normally needs to be kind of as a wide player or sitting underneath, kind of withdrawn. He's not really the kind of guy who can sit up top and kind of hold up play, and certainly not win aerial balls and stuff like that. And then Struber said after the game that it was a decision motivated by City's back line being immobile, which, however you feel about City, their squad is fairly, decent quality, and their backline has been there for a long time. Collins and Chanot actually didn't start, but they had their new guy, Thiago. His name is Thiago Martins, not to be confused with the 90s MLS guy named Thiago Martins. But anyway, none of them really have a reputation for being slowpokes or like really old or anything like that. So, and again, say what you want about City fans, they were kind of like, in good faith, kind of going like, I don't get what he's saying about our guys being immobile. You can say, they suck or vulnerable or whatever like that, but immobile sounds like a strange diagnosis to give.
Also, given the way they play, they rely so much on passing mobility in their own third.
Right. Yeah. These guys aren't just a bunch of like 6'6", like Swedish, blockhead guys. These are, pretty modern defenders, not to give them too much credit. So just kind of a strange rationale being given. And, it's especially strange just in the context of the constantly eroding minutes of Patrick Lamala. I feel like earlier in this season we were saying it's becoming odd that he's not trusted to go longer than say 60, 70 minutes in a game, and now he's getting subbed even when he starts, which isn't a guarantee anymore, is getting subbed in like the 48th, 52nd, whatever minutes. Not sure how. Unless there's something in the works, I'm not sure how you rehabilitate a striker's confidence with that sort of selection policy. And, we can take his word for it on the tactical motivations for it, but you can't say that it worked in this game.
Yeah, it was especially strange for me, given that, Klimala's strengths this season in particular have been more in sort of that false nine dropping back facilitating role, which Omir did fine at, but Klimala would give you that sort of role, but also has a little bit more of the attributes of being sort of a more focal point for the attack. When the team is set up to actually service him, which most of the time it hasn't, the time he's been here, but he still at least has a little bit more of hold-up ability and ability to draw in defenders than I think Omer was able to. And it's also particularly baffling because, like, you know, maybe you don't rate Klimala. One doesn't rate Klimala. We all kind of do. But even if you don't rate him, it doesn't seem like anyone really has been intentionally or explicitly arguing that he's so bad that starting no striker at all and then putting in Barlow and Serge Ngoma in this match instead of playing Barlow, that like Struber was forced to do that. Like, it would make more sense to me, like, to critique Klimala as like coming up short if he had played in this game and missed a couple chances. But this like, wasn't even allowed to happen. Instead, we played a game where for portions of the 90, a good portion of the first half, some of the tactical things did go right. For instance, like the overloads on the width worked very, very well. First 20 minutes, very well. But even I think for the first 35, 40 minutes, our plan of kind of playing down the sides and not letting Gray and Amundsen get up the field was working well. Lucanius and Morgan were able to get in behind Dylan Nealis too and Tolkien. But there was no focal point in the attack to drag the ball back to, because Omer was not really doing that role. He was doing a false nine for guys who are not making runs in behind. So and then I'll leave the substitution as a point to discuss later. But yeah, to me, I guess for this initial point is that even if you don't rate Klimala, it is completely different degree to then say that like Struber was like somehow forced to not play him, because it remains baffling. I can only speculate on why that might be, that he felt like he couldn't even put him in and wanted to put in a 16-year-old instead. You know, does a 16-year-old understand, who's been hurt until like a week ago, does he understand all these completely intricate pressing triggers than Patrick Klimala? I really doubt it. So the mind wanders for what the rationale could have been there, because some of the things are going right, but it seems like we just really needed a focal point of attack on the field, but the manager seemed to be determined to not put that in the lineup and not substitute it in.
Yeah, and I think it's funny because we've probably said, along with, you know, people who are watching this team a lot, that there aren't that many chances for someone like Klimala to really finish, but I think it stands very obviously that in this game, we obviously did have a lot of kind of danger coming from the wings in, where Luquinhas and Morgan were able to go up the field with the ball and, you know, generate some danger. But there was also no one running that central channel, making that run, being a number 9 on the team, which stood out very obviously. And then it felt very frustrating when Tom Barlow comes in, but I don't remember who said it, but like he doesn't really like make runs as much as he like runs distractions, and then, you know, like he kind of runs directly to as interference, but not really intending to get on the end of stuff.
Yeah, it's a baffling game state to put Tom Barlow in. We've had our semi defenses of Tom Barlow. Most of the time, I think it's been that he doesn't deserve being made scapegoat, like in the 2020 and 2019 seasons. But when you're chasing a game, or even when you're just trying to go up on a heated rival where you need a focal point in attack, Tom Barlow is a baffling choice to go for that, because yeah, he made these sort of runs, but not really in relationship to what we were doing, and our entire shape and plan seemed to break down.
Well, yeah, I was literally just going to say that when Struber has put Barlow on, either at halftime sometimes or fairly early, there has been a little bit of you know, you can kind of see the thinking behind it, because they were in games where the press wasn't really working and we just weren't really controlling things, and Barlow just kind of being a battering ram up there can sort of break things open a bit. But in this game, where, like you were saying, Brit, in the first half, the formation was working fairly well, but missing that kind of edge in the final third that we're talking about. Right, that's just the opposite of the situation where you think Barlow would change the game. And of course, when he came on, you know, he did change the game in the sense that the team, you know, felt even less confident about feeding balls, you know, up into the center. and got even more tentative on the ball, and eventually it broke into City just attacking in waves for the rest of the game.
If anything, I would think that Barlow would be like the type of he'd be the type of player who would fit into this quote unquote tactical analysis that Struber tried to give on these center backs who are slow.
Start him,
why wouldn't you start Barlow?
Right.
Even though he's just wrong about that, right? They're not slow or immobile, but just to play that out, Barlow would be the guy to put on to start to see if you could make something happen. And I feel like if that were the case, and then Klimala comes on in the 50th minute, it wouldn't be such an issue. It's just and we'll talk. I mean, obviously we're going to keep talking about it, but I think that just made it so much worse.
Yeah, definitely. And Barlow's runs and pressing triggers, I mean, they seem to be different than what Omir's were. I'm not going to pretend like I logged them all in high detail, or that I can give you your official designations or whatever. But it was clear that he was sort of trying to pressure at different moments, and our pressing scheme seemed to break down, because in the first half there were 2 points of the field that were really suffocating them really well. Basically, the sort of point between their third and the middle third, nothing was getting out of there at all, particularly out on the wings. We were doing a really good job. And then when it did get out there, Amaya and CCJ were having a really good game, shutting down that next kind of third boundary between the middle third and our defensive third, usually in conjunction with the wide players who were there, usually Dylan Nealis and Tolkien. I thought Dylan Nealis actually had a pretty decent game to that extent too. That went totally out the window though. When Barlow came on, there were many times that City was able to just sort of do a basic triangle and sort of move the ball up out of pressure in their own third, and then just basically bypass the entire middle of the field, which they weren't able to do in the first half.
It's funny that both of you talk about Dylan Nealis, not because I want to own you about it, but just to bring up that Struber seemed to have a different opinion of Dylan Nealis' play in the first half, which I guess is good to bring up in an episode where we're kind of breaking the seal a little bit on questioning Struber's eyes. So,
because also, I mean, I was skeptical of him the first month and a half of the season. I was like, I don't know if this guy has it, but I think he has grown, and he looked like he was, pardon the expression, understood the assignment. In this game.
People. I mean, not to go off on one of our,
paramours.
Well, I was going to say one of our most annoying sidebars that frequently comes up, but just this need to have a scapegoat on the team, no matter how good or badly they're doing. But people have been trying to make out Dylan Nealis to be like some Patrick Seagrass type figure, and it's just come on, he looks fine.
Which Patrick Seagrass is also an inconsequential figure,
right?
Yeah,
but I mean, I'm just using him as
exactly.
a reference point, as just just people desperately. It's like some people want to have that to complain about instead of actually analyzing games.
It's just, an easy point to cling on to.
Just blame the player with the worst resume. But just but anyway, I mean, maybe I rate him more than the rank and file, but I don't see how you can say. I mean, Struber has more UEFA badges than me. I mean, maybe if I had sugar water money helping me get them, it would be different. But
viewers or listeners, Ben Cork has cracked open a can of Red Bull before this game. So, just keep it in. We're on Ben Cork watch this episode.
My Venmo is but no, Struber's more qualified than me, certainly, but I just don't see how, he's a player that you would ride so much more than any other, player in the team. I mean, in games like this, it's not like anybody in the team is really, covering themselves in glory. And I mean, yeah, whatever. That's end of rant.
Did he say anything in particular about Nealis, or because
after the game?
Yeah, because
Not really.
The only thing that I noticed was in the first half, because or it was actually I think it was in the first half, because he was visibly yelling at Dylan and having him come over to the sideline a couple of times.
Maybe some of that is just the position he plays, that he's the player who's running by Struber the most, and Struber just wants everybody to get up, but he's the closest guy to yell at. But also, yeah, I don't know.
Just off of like the body language and all of that.
Not to like continue with the theme, but it just it
that was him and Kyle Duncan too.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, it just seems like certain players get some pretty visceral treatment that others don't. But that's sports sometimes. But it's also just strange to keep seeing so much in different stages and at different levels of form. Like.
He's played like 4 positions on the back five.
Right,
like
yeah.
he's a versatile, like rotational, like a depth signing. I think that was the intent the entire time. And I think he's doing well at that role. But like, I think some of the chances that I feel like we missed in the first half were from, like I think Tolkien, Nealis, and Omir all had, 3 separate opportunities to score and they just didn't execute. And I don't know if that's like a personnel issue or whatever. Maybe it is with like Omir versus Klimala, like in that same situation. But I think that for the first 45, it seemed like everything was like working, like we were executing correctly, and like our wing backs were like doing a good job, like keeping pressure on and giving, like actually like creating chances for the attack, which was nice to see. But that obviously unravels in the second half.
Yeah, and also, I mean, City's in second place, playing fullbacks of Tavon Gray, Chris Gloucester, and that Amundsen guy.
Tinnerholm's back too.
Oh yeah. Philly's in first place, playing Kyle Wagner and Nathan Harriel as their fullbacks. If they have
nobody in the league.
If they have 99 gold shiny foot cards, I wouldn't know. I don't keep spreadsheet of these things, but I don't think they do.
Nobody in the league has Danny Alves and Ashley Cole or whoever. Actually, Ashley Cole was in the league a few years ago.
I was gonna say.
when he was old and
He was
trash.
pretty good when he was in the league too.
Well, but yeah, I mean, he was when he was like 40. Not being world class.
Look, I'm just saying,
anymore,
Gerhard Struber needs to get on the
but
pace medal already. Like,
but I mean, you get what I'm saying. That we talked about it. It was a theme of this show and my early writing for OAM that part of this team's strength was that we had kind of the best pair of kind of value fullbacks in the league,
right.
And they were just kind of like run of the mill Jamaican and Panamanian internationals. I mean, it's not like you need to have Champions League fullbacks to compete.
And let's take
in Major League Soccer.
Time machine back to peak Red Bull system optimism, right? Let's go to September 2018, I think it was. And, the whole exciting idea was that we had figured out a way to, find the inefficiencies, or Red Bull had figured out a way to find the inefficiencies, that we had drilled a system that we could take otherwise sort of ordinary players like Florian Valot, and maybe Vincent Bezecourt, those guys,
Marcus Epps.
But when you put them into this system where everyone is brainwashed and knowing where the press triggers are and everything, they will play above their ability because the system is so good. Now we've got Red Bull boy number 1, star Red Bull boy, Gerhard Struber, who's worked at Liefering, was personally brought by Maudeschitz to be here, and we're on peak Red Bull integration, really the most Red Bull integration we've ever had, and we're seeing the complete opposite of that. That apparently the players are always shit. None of the players seem to understand what he's going for, and we're at the point, and this is a familiar note maybe that we brought up a year or two ago, that it's been enough time here where Struber's been here for what? Almost 2 years in a way, sort of?
I mean, he's got like 10 more games in his second season.
Yeah.
So.
And we're still at a point apparently where none of the players understand what he wants them to do. Guys are getting iced out. Klimala apparently doesn't understand anything. 16-year-old guy who has been fit for 2 weeks understands it better. Drew Yearwood doesn't understand anything. Caden Clark doesn't understand anything. Cameron Harper didn't understand anything for a year, and then Gerhard Struber was like, oh, wait, I guess I could play him as a wingback instead, and now he sort of understands things.
Oh, guy who was frozen out for 6 months understands everything, though?
Dylan Nealis doesn't understand anything,
Frankie
even though we wouldn't got him.
Yeah. Frankie Amaya is terrible all of last year, and now is the team MVP.
Yeah. And now it's like, well, gee, Gerhard, if nobody understands what you're trying to go for, maybe you're not explaining it very well. Maybe. That could be the common denominator here. Because it's, maybe we can buy 20 players every 6 months. I mean, I guess that's what Joachim Schneider was good at doing for Schalke. We can get 20 players every 6 months and find a second division to play in instead of our first one, as Schalke is doing, and we can win the award for cleverest boys in the school, in the kindergarten. That's my one German jab because I'm trying to be more serious this episode. But, it's doesn't seem like winning was really the goal this week, was it? Kind of seems like being very clever indeed is the most important thing.
Ow.
And to that, Gerhard, congratulations. I don't get it. You're smarter than me. I don't get it. I don't get what you're trying to do. I mean, I got what you're trying to do the first half. I don't think anyone got what you're trying to do with the substitution, because also just intangibly, because I think ESPN paid a couple more cameramen to be on the sideline than usual, we got a lot more up-close looks at players' faces. Not only was the system broken completely after the Barlow substitution, complete apathy, ambivalence. And it was a look like, I think, that you said, speaking to what you said a second ago, Sam, about Dylan Nealis having played 4 different positions, all these guys are standing around and look at each other, sort of saying, like, I don't know, man, like, yeah, let's just, like...
There's been
I don't know what we're gonna do.
It's not like full on mutiny or like Kieran Dyer and Lee Bowyer punching each other, but there's been a little bit of an uptick in players kind of jawing with each other and on the field and kind of pointing around and not seeming to be on the same page. So again, yeah, it's been a year and a half from a manager who was supposed to be. Whose whole reputation before coming here was being this turnaround artist, this guy who could, take a perhaps insufficient group of young players and turn them into gold. And we're, again, 1.5 years, 1.75, whatever you want to call it, not really seeming to get better week by week, and maybe becoming the opposite in the last few weeks.
Somebody asked a good question.
It's a kind of a big sort of moment in the summer here.
Somebody asked a good question online. I think it was Jav saying, when's the last time we scored from the run and play, and not like a golazo from Lucchinius or Morgan?
I mean,
or
that was my column in OAM like a few weeks ago as well. Yeah, that. There's been some Serge and Goma's goal was from the run of play, but yeah, it was not a team goal. It was the kind of unicorn pressing goal. Kind of unicorn pressing, like single man pressing goal that only happens once in a while, and is not really the way a pressing system is really supposed to create a goal. But anyway, there's been nothing like it was something we talked about for a while, that NYC Derby game, the last one under Jesse Marsh, where there was that article where Kaku and BWP and Velo were all saying like, oh yeah, we knew exactly where to run and pass and all that kind of stuff, because we've been playing together so well and we knew the system and all that. And it just, seems like the complete opposite of that recently here.
Well, because they're not playing in the same position every week.
They're not playing in the same position
not
every
playing
week.
With the same guys every week.
They're not playing the same system, half to half or even within halves.
I will say,
So.
In contrast to 2019, this year we usually have at least one half or like 1 30-minute spell where the guys do seem to be doing something familiar to themselves. But we seem to be, or Struber seems to be obsessed or like pathologically terrified of staying in that system. Like the idea that we could just like have a system that we impose or is like our go-to and that we roll out the ball and we trust our guys to execute it seems to be anathema to him, which I guess speaking to your point about the promises when he came in, the whole thing was like, oh yeah, I'm like a big motivator. I'm, I can really like mentor youth players. But also how am I supposed to win with all these youth players that don't understand me? So a little bit of both things going on right now. And then considering that we all expect him to take another job sometime soon, I just hope we don't blow up the squad and alienate a couple of quality players before another manager can come in.
Have we already hit that point with like Yearwood? Like, is it beyond? I mean, even Klamala, like what happens in Austin? Like you know, like is it over? Like
I'd be so pissed if I'm Klamala. I mean, like
Yeah.
like I'm brought in, thinking I'm going to be playing week in week out a lot of these minutes at least to show that I can be a good striker. But
He's trying to
can't
make a World Cup team.
Yeah, you can't even show off anything because you can't play for more than 70 minutes at most, maybe 80 if the conditions are like right for him. But like it's almost like putting players in a weird like selfish position where like or at least Klamala, because he only gets 60 minutes of a window to show what he's got in the game, right?
Well, I mean, and Drew Yearwood's played 45 minutes in the last month.
Yeah.
in like a pretty dense stretch too.
After he was in the team for that entire early stretch of the season where we were winning every game on the home and then on the road and then just coming up short at home.
It's been papered over by the fact that CCJ, now that he's finally been in his correct position, is playing quite well. Yeah, but that's the thing. It's like Struber didn't know what he was doing with that. He was just like trying to play him all over the place. Tactics genius, player development genius, Gerhard Struber finally plays CCJ as like more of a 8. And I guess that works. And then I guess gives the license to put Drew back in the doghouse. Also considering that Gerhard Struber has such exacting demands and nobody gets it, but he plays Sean Davis literally every single minute of last year while openly discussing with him, and Sean Davis kind of discussing it, that he basically doesn't fit the overall plan of what's going on here. So like how much deviation or variance from the plan is acceptable? Very unclear. Kyle Duncan playing on the wrong foot and having catastrophic errors and giving up in the middle of the game was fine, but whatever. But Drew Yearwood like not getting one press trigger is enough to like completely freeze his career at age 21, 20. I don't know.
It's always good for young players to constantly chastise them and put them in the doghouse every few months.
It's a weird what if.
That's what good youth developers do.
Yeah,
it's a weird what if to think if Sean Davis was still on this team, if he had accepted like that last minute offer or something.
Yeah, I mean, it makes me wonder how much of that was real. I don't know, because it kind of feels impossible in a way,
But imagine.
But yeah, feeling pretty dour as far as the goal we gave up. I mean, it's just creating one little chance.
After Castellanos had missed a ton of chances,
right?
That's what it looks like when a striker actually gets service is that they miss a lot of their chances sometimes too. But then he got one. I mean, the players after the game just sort of admitted, maybe this speaks to the kind of loss of tactical coherence in the second half, that just the lines were too far apart. There was too much space in between their different blocks, and City was just able to put a ball over and he was able to hammer it in, and that was that. But they almost got more.
The pressure on the entry ball should have been higher as well.
Right, which was where CCJ should have been, right? And then
I think so.
Nealis, I think he a few things. I feel like I accidentally ended up watching that replay of the goal like 5 or 6 times in a row and
seething and fury.
Well, I was talking about it with somebody, one of my friends at work. We were just talking about like the Red Bulls. He's like a Sounders fan for no reason. I don't really know why. Sounds about right.
And
I get it, Luna.
Right. Nealis keeps him onside, and then accidentally takes like one step forward when the delivery ball comes in. So he's on the wrong foot, and then he's like chasing Tati at that point, which is when he's just like, open for that, the tap in. So it just seemed like a series of just like poor decisions from Nealis, who otherwise did not, I don't think, had a bad game.
It's bad center field play. First step is always back.
Yeah.
Come on. And that's all it takes. It's really, I mean, City had a couple other chances when we sort of imploded, but I think as Higginbotham, and Steve would never say this, but as Danny Higginbotham said on the broadcast, we did have most of the game, and of the teams who asserted a style in the game, it was definitely us more than that. But it didn't matter for anything, especially since the team seemed to just completely implode and give up in the last 30 minutes.
It felt like Charlotte, honestly, is what it felt like. I feel like there was a point where I was like kind of happy about how the team would like fight back after going down. But this you could throw this in the same category as Miami and Charlotte, really, with just the way that the team totally gave up toward the last 15-20.
Yeah, and also just really, I like Daniel Edelman. I'm pretty hot on his chances. There's been a couple games this year where I've been like, this last 15 minutes would be a great fit for him. But taking off Luquinhas for Daniel Edelman,
both taking off Luquinhas and not putting on Drew Yearwood.
Morgan
taking
and
off
they came off
Luquinhas,
similar times, right?
Yeah.
Luquinhas and Morgan.
Morgan came off.
I don't think we would have scored anyway because the team seemed to have given up and had no fight in them and were not motivated. Anyway, but taking off Luquinhas when you are trailing 1-0 to your hated rival in a big 6-point game at home, win just for 10 minutes just to close the game, complete loser behavior. I don't know if he was trying to make a point, if he was trying to be fancy, if he was trying to do something. It's inexplicable what Struber's doing with that move.
Unserious.
Was he aware that it was a derby? Did he demonstrate in his press conference that he was aware that it was a derby?
Just a totally unserious moment for a very, it was a big game, right? The sense of occasion was not lost on me when I walked into the arena and I saw a sea of red shirts, and it was just, it felt like, oh, we're not going to treat this with the sense of it was not a serious. It didn't feel like a serious move to do that, right?
Well, there's a little bit of danger when we start making Jurgen Klinsmann analogies, because there are a little bit of kind of along these topics. The main one being, because I said earlier there was the supposedly immobile backline for City that motivated the false nine setup, but. Also, if there's an immobile back nine, you want a full nine, right? You want a guy who's running behind and stuff. But anyway, the other motivation that was put forward for it was that other players just are Struber said, putting their noses ahead a little bit in training, which, fair enough. That's always kind of a go-to manager justification, is that I watch training and you don't. But when you're putting on Julian Green, Serge Ngoma, instead of one of your DP level attacking players, or your teenage phenom who was the best player in the team when he was 17 and is now not to be trusted with any minutes. I don't know. I don't know what the other players could be doing so much better in training that puts the pecking order that kind of drastic.
Yeah.
That Caden Clark plays the RB2 game and doesn't make the bench for this game. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
After being one of the key players for the U20s and getting his fitness up after he had already been sandbagged for the first part of the season. So, I don't know. I'm not, like Brit said, you're smarter than me, Gerhard. I give up.
Yeah.
We'll
see what pattern takes hold from here.
We can only fail Gerhard. Gerhard can never fail
us. My final note on this, I think, is that, sometimes there's an ambient framework in Red Bull's discourse that's still out there that sort of lumps things into either you're pro Red Bull or anti Red Bull, basically. And the definition of that is do you think Red Bull doesn't spend enough? Which is, if you listen to the show consistently, you'll know that we find that's flawed in a lot of ways. But I'll even be generous and I'll indulge that a little bit. And I'll say, you know what? Yes, actually, in this case, though, being critical of the manager is not exclusive of being critical of Red Bull. Because Red Bull's most recent transfer signing for New York was a flop. And it's true. You might be surprised based on what I said earlier in the episode. But yeah, I think New York's biggest transfer was a flop. Seems to not get along with coworkers. seems to have incidents of petulance, seems to have a sort of toxic work environment and inscrutable decisions. And New York's biggest, most consequential transfer in the last 2 years was Gerhard Struber, who we paid a fee for to get out of his to get out of his job at Barnsley, where he was also complaining after 6 months that he didn't have Pep Guardiola's striker budget. So yeah, I'm like pretty skeptical of Red Bull as an ownership group, not feeling good about that. So definitely don't want to, don't exclude me from like Red Bull skeptic crowd. And the big reason of that is that I'm skeptical of Gerhard Struber right now. I don't know. The decision to hire him seems weird, to sort of stash him here. His refusal to like actually work with the assets that we've spent a considerable amount of money on in the last year. He is
said in an interview last week that he's not the biggest fan of living here. So,
cool.
Yeah.
He is the cornerstone in the big move that Mateschitz and Red Bull made. So Red Bull has done is kind of not doing a great job with its management of New York, and that is expressed through Gerhard Struber. So where does the buck stop, I guess?
Well, I mean, isn't this like where we came into this whole managerial situation as we're, looking towards accountability. And Gerhard now has kind of taken reins, I feel like, of the whole show. And
the figure who hires and fires the manager that we've always talked about is now much more clouded again. But I mean, I guess going into the next few weeks of games, we have to see from Struber what I mean, he certainly obviously needs new players if he's not going to use the one he currently has.
Where are they?
But I mean, going into this next batch of games, I lost my train of thought a little bit, but going into this next batch of games, which are going to be some tough ones, it's going to be on the road in Austin, on the road to get into the Open Cup final in Orlando. I'm going to have the Barcelona friendly kind of tying things up in the middle of that. It's going to be a big week where the team's season is a little bit on a knife edge. We've now dropped 6 points behind the conference lead. And some other teams still have games in hand on us, and I really think to bring this back to Struber again, and this being his 1.5 years into his tenure, which is the longest tenure he's ever had at any club ever before he's ladder climbed somewhere else. I don't think the expectation would be to finish fourth in the conference his second season.
Yeah.
When he was brought into the job.
Not like this, at least. Not with this energy. Not with this sort of being so close to being on the doorstep, but then not really delivering.
But also not with this level of like insubordination either. I think that's like the big thing too, is that he's just so like, I don't know, he's just so like kind of petulant about everything in a weird way, it feels like.
Yeah, it was kind of strange. He went on a little bit of a sidebar in the press conference to say, I actually thought the referee did really good in this game. But I don't know. That's been another thing that's had kind of diminishing returns the more he does it.
Halfway through this game, he changed his shirt again. That's one thing
Red
he's on.
shirt.
Yeah.
What's that all about? This is the longest Is this really his longest tenure?
Yeah, he was. I mean, he was only with he was with Liefering, the Salzburg reserve squad for the folks at home, but left that job 6 months through to supposedly get his UEFA Pro license, and then his first ever managerial job after that was at Wolfsberger, where he took a team that was already in the Europa League from the season before and coached them for 3 months before taking job at Barnsley, and then was only there for I don't even know if
like
it went a
6
full
months,
I don't even know if it went a full calendar year because there was COVID in the middle of it, so he didn't even really coach a full season of games there. And like Brit said, one semester in and he's already complaining that Barnsley, literally tiny little mining town, smallest club in the championship, was not paying for Zlatan or whoever. The history smells too much to not raise eyebrows a little bit at what's been going on the last few weeks.
Yeah, and the thing
as
is,
far
like,
as I'll go for now.
the assumption always has been, and part of the appeal at least, is that, I guess, him being this kind of career climber meant that he had ambitions which would you would think also came with, big ideas for us. But,
And then he would be invested in making this job a huge success.
Right.
Like,
But it's also like, I don't know, it's just everything just like, it just feels not good. Even though like we're in a decent position. Like you're saying, it's like, we're bringing up a lot of the Klinsmann things, but I don't think it's quite the same as like we've been dangerously close to saying it, but like I don't think it's the same as the previous zone that we were
No,
in.
and we hadn't invoked it yet, so I think we could keep it that way.
Yeah, right.
It is different enough that different characteristics, but the Klinsmann comparison is still apt.
Yes, but it's yeah.
So far this season, I feel like I've.
Oh, I have one more thing about the New York City game. I also don't think we have realized how much that game, on their perspective, could be a Cushing zone game for them.
Yeah, but like I don't know.
Even though we never won a derby game.
No, I don't disagree. It just sort of feels like
there's no
give a fuck
fun
who
in
wins.
pursuing
Football's
it.
ruined.
Yeah.
Falling massively out of football.
But Tati
love
Castellanos' last game fucks off to God knows where. Maybe they fall apart.
Yeah, they literally invented a transfer because they couldn't sell him. But okay. A mixed Discaroo transfer.
So far this season, I've actually been sort of annoyed or concerned that I've been going back and forth too much episode to episode, that we will have a sort of upbeat episode and then sort of a downbeat episode, and then maybe contradicting myself a little bit too much, because I do like to try to have a unified theory or narrative of what is going on that is testable, and it kind of organize the thoughts that way so that it can be falsifiable. That was a big thing in the zone, if you were listening back then as well, of analyzing what we think was going on wrong with the squad. And I guess this year the closest I've been to having that was sort of, I've been talking about the metaphor of like feeling like it seems like a shoe is going to drop one way or the other. And I really wanted to, and the shoe is going to drop on whether this project like takes the next step forward, and like the sort of the players mature and the tactical system matures and the club kind of matures towards being back to what we were in the 13 through 18 era, really even the 10 through 18 era. And after the Open Cup game in that episode, I really wanted to believe and really thought like, wow, this seems like maybe the shoe is dropping towards a good direction. This week, I feel like we have a little bit more perspective on how some of the goals we've been creating the last month were not really sustainable and intentional and deliberate goals. And all the extracurricular stuff really pushes the opposite direction. The shoe's dropping in a bad direction, and that we might have a bunch of a manager who's kind of determined to not really tutor or mentor his side, the players on his side, might be alienating players, we might be riding on the vine, I guess, to mix another metaphor in. That said, prove me wrong. How do you say that in German? Prove me wrong. That is sort of a weird one.
In Dutch, it's proven me wrong.
What now?
That's
so
like
we can kind of
syllables
telephone
for the
it from
Dutch.
there.
Yeah. I'd love to be owned. I dare you to do it. Fucking own me. Until then, I will reserve judgment, though. I've got to head out in a sec, unfortunately, but any other thoughts? I mean, I think...
I was going to say a nice way to be proven wrong is to win a cup.
Yeah, I think we'll do another episode between Austin and Orlando. I think that sounds... I'll be available for it.
Yeah.
All right, well, until then, next week, after Austin, before Orlando. See ya.
It's Alex!